So I don't typically cover rumors on my channel, but if this rumor holds true, the OCG and Yu-Gi-Oh! As a whole are in for a massive transformation. What's going on, guys? It's Cimo. So I had a completely different video scheduled for today, but then something really interesting popped up on Facebook, and a couple people brought that to my attention, and that is a rumored OCG ban list for January of 2018. Now, before we get into this, I just want to caution you heavily because this is still a rumor and it's completely unconfirmed, and as you guys know, I don't really cover rumors that often on my channel, but the one reason I wanted to cover this is not only because of the content of the rumor itself, but the reason that I'm led to believe that this could possibly come to fruition is the fact that in the OCG, when they were leaking everything about the Link Vrains pack, that also came from a very similar source, and that actually managed to be completely true. We got the whole list of all of the different Link monsters that were going to be supporting older archetypes to kind of help bring them into the day and age that Yu-Gi-Oh! Has come to, and that actually managed to be 100% true, even though there was so much speculation behind the fact that that was entirely false. So we're getting this information in a very similar fashion, but I do want to caution you that this is completely a rumor and none of this is confirmed at the time of making this video, so do take it with a grain of salt. But let's get into the content itself. So not only is this a ban list, and it's a pretty big ban list at that, but there's also a plethora of erratas on cards that are currently on the ban list that would be moving to limited status that are definitely worth discussing as well. So with that in mind, let's get right into it. So starting off with the forbidden cards, the forbidden cards on this rumored list are Instant Fusion and Twin Twister. Now, when I first saw this and I saw Twin Twister was on here, I was immediately skeptical of the fact that this is true entirely, because Twin Twister is one of those cards that you kind of think, would a card like that ever really be hit on the ban list? And to me, that just seems completely unnecessary and improbable that a card like Twin Twister would actually, in fact, be on the ban list, especially banned at that. But then you look at something like Instant Fusion, and when you think of all the shenanigans that Instant Fusion can do, I mean, yeah, there's stuff with like Thousand Eyes or Strict, especially in the OCG because they have Link Karibo, and Instant Fusion can kind of turbo out a lot of different things, and now that we're in Master Rule 4, and Instant Fusion can do a lot of things that I don't think were necessarily intended in this game, so I could kind of see an argument for Instant Fusion, but Twin Twister is kind of where the first red flag goes off, where I don't really necessarily think that this might be true. But again, I do want to remind you guys that we got information like this before with the Link Vrains pack, and it ended up being 100% true, as completely improbable as it may have sounded, because if you looked back maybe a year ago, and we knew about Link monsters, and we heard that we were going to be getting all these archetype-specific Link monsters, a lot of people would just be completely scoffing at that and saying, hell no, that's not going to happen. So, you know, maybe it is possible, and when we get into some of these limited cards and some of these erratas, you kind of think to yourself, maybe this is actually a possibility. So moving on to the limited cards, there's a lot of them. So starting off with Spiral, there's Spiral Gear Drone, Quick Fix, and Resort. Now here in the TCG, Drone and Quick Fix are already at 1, so that kind of makes sense and leads me to believe that a deck like that is going to be hit in a very similar fashion. But they also hit Spiral Resort, which is a very big hit for Spiral, not only for its consistency, but for its protection from being targeted by just pretty much anything, and bestowing that protection to an entire Spiral player's board. That's a really big hit to the deck, more so than how we have here in the TCG, and could be just a big enough crippling blow to actually just hurt the deck's consistency so much that it's not going to be the massive powerhouse that we've come to expect it to be. There's also Grinder Golem, which I'm personally of the opinion that Grinder Golem should just be flat out banned, but I guess in this list, Grinder Golem's kind of is being treated similarly to something like Gofu, where it's a one-of, and it's kind of like a power one-of at that, but I personally don't feel like a card like that should exist, because if you've seen any of the degenerate things that Grinder Golem is able to do in the OCG, you would kind of agree with me that it's just absolutely absurd and honestly doesn't really have a place in this current game. Then there's also El Shaddoll Construct. Now this is the first of several erratas on here, and this is where things start to get really interesting. So the errata to El Shaddoll Construct is the fact that if El Shaddoll Construct is fusion summoned, whatever light monster you use to summon El Shaddoll Construct cannot activate its effect. So for instance, if you were to send a Trick Clown to the graveyard to summon El Shaddoll Construct, because Trick Clown is a light monster, you wouldn't be able to special it back. And I guess if there were multiple constructs, like let's say if it was at 2 or 3, you wouldn't be able to use a construct for another construct and trigger the first construct to add your fusion spell back to your hand, which is what a lot of Shaddoll players did to loop El Shaddoll Fusion, and it's part of the reason why the deck was so powerful and able to OTK so easily. So I can kind of see that, but at the same time, that's a really big deal. And if we're looking at the fact that we're going into 2018, if El Shaddoll Construct came off the ban list to 1, like, do we need an errata to that card? Because I feel like this is, you know, we're looking at Shaddolls here. Yeah, I guess they just had a partial top 32 at YCS Prague, so I guess the deck is still somewhat able to do something, but at the same time, I really don't think an errata like that is really going to just blow open Shaddolls. But at the same time, you have to think that with the Link Vrains pack coming out, it gives Shaddolls that Link monster, so maybe this is kind of alluding to that support? Who knows? That kind of, there's kind of like arguments on both sides here. Then we have the Damage Juggler coming back to 1 as well. Kind of makes sense. I mean, just the Perform Ages has kind of been just nerfed entirely, so having that card come back to 1, I don't necessarily think is a big deal. Then there's also Yata-Garasu, and this is the second card getting errated. Now, Yata-Garasu has basically the exact same effect, except I believe your opponent needs to have 4 cards minimum in their hand for Yata to activate its effect. So basically, it's creating a stipulation where you can't just lock your opponent out if they have no cards in hand and prevent them from drawing. And that's a little bit more fair, but again, is anyone going to play Yata-Garasu in 2018 if you can prevent your opponent from drawing? Probably not. Even if it wasn't errated, selling Yata is a very big, that's a very arduous task, and I don't think, errata or not, I don't know if it really has a place in this current game. Then we also have Heavy Storm coming off the list to 1, and this is where things start getting interesting, because you also have to remember there is the localized Trunade card in the OCG as well that comes out in Extreme Force. That's essentially Giant Trunade. It only hits face down spells and traps, but it blows them all back to the hand, and that card is currently at 3. So with 3 localized Trunade and a Heavy Storm, you kind of ask the question, does Twin Twister need to be in the format? Now, it's kind of difficult to compare Twin Twister to cards like Heavy Storm or localized Trunade because they're different, they're just 2 completely different cards. One's a quick play, you know, there's all these different things, but it is spell and trap removal, so you could make the argument that they're banning Twin Twister to not only bring Heavy Storm back into the mix, but to make a place for localized Trunade to help, you know, encourage people to play more cards out of Extreme Force. And, you know, Konami is a business and they're trying to sell new product. That definitely does seem to be in line with that sort of mentality. Then we also have 3 more cards that are on the limited list that are all receiving erratas. The first one is Painful Choice. Now, Painful Choice, instead of having 5 cards, you select 2. You send 1 to the graveyard, your opponent selects the other one to add to your hand. And I believe on the translation, the card you send to the graveyard can't activate its effect, and you might not be able to special summon the turn you activate Painful Choice. So, again, it doesn't have a place in 2017/2018 format. That's pretty much very difficult to say at this point, but I don't think by nerfing it that hard, it really will have that place. Although you do get to add pretty much any card to your hand, so that could be pretty good. The big one here is Pot of Greed. Now, Pot of Greed's errata is draw 2 cards, and you cannot activate it, you cannot special summon the turn you activate this effect. So it's basically like Pot of Duality. It has all the stipulations where it's once per turn, you can't special summon, and you get to draw 2 cards. So it's kind of like, you know, Card of Demise in a way now as well, where you're getting all this value, but you're pretty much heavily restricted on what you can do for the rest of your turn. That's a really, really interesting one. But again, I kind of look and see, is that a card that really needs to be errataed? I'm not too sure. And the last one is Metamorphosis. Metamorphosis is errata is it can only be used on a level 5 or lower monster, whereas before it could be used on anything, and that's when people were summoning Last Warrior from another planet in the OCG, so there's a lot of degeneracy with stuff like that. If people were actually playing Metamorphosis, it was mainly off of Cyberstein, but there were some cool things you could do with Metamorphosis with the higher levels, so I think that's kind of a check on that just to kind of take cards like that out of the equation. But again, is that going to be a card worth running in the future? I can't necessarily say for sure. Now, there are some semi-limits and unlimits as well. There's Scapegoat, Set Rotation, Divine Wind of Mist Valley, Spellbook of Secrets, Spellbook of Knowledge, Alistair the Invoker, because it is at 1 currently in Japan, Tribe Infecting Virus, as well as Dante. Dante going to 2 is really interesting because not only does it support the Link Vrains pack theory, but it also gives more support to Burning Abyss, giving them even closer to full power. Remember, they have 3 Beatrice, 3 Seer, 3 Graph. Burning Abyss in the OCG is just amazing. And then you have the unlimits, which are Atlantean Dragoons, which makes sense considering Mermail are getting a Link monster in the Link Vrains pack. You have Summoner Monk, Pot of Avarice, Future Fusion, and Union Hanger. So that's it for this entire speculative list, but I'm really curious to hear what you guys have to think in the comments down below. Do you think there's some validity to this? Do you think the fact that the Link Vrains pack was revealed in a very similar way has any validity to the fact that this could be true? Or is there something else leading you to believe that this might be entirely false, like I kind of feel with the fact that Twin Twister has the potential to be banned? I'm really curious to hear your guys' thoughts. Guys, thank you so much for watching the video. Be sure to like the video as always. Subscribe to the channel for more amazing Yu-Gi-Oh! Content, and if you found this video interesting, consider backing me on Patreon, because just by pledging only $1 a month, you're contributing to my ability to continue bringing you amazing Yu-Gi-Oh! Content. I'll update you if I get any more information on if this does hold true, but otherwise, guys, thank you so much again for watching the video, and we'll see you next time.